Yams. First, I want to give all praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashim, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashim, Rakah, Kwadash, Tawada, Amen. Double honors to the elders of Great Millstone, leading in truth and spirit and sincerity, and double honors to all the camps on the highways and byways, bringing out the word in the name of Yahweh, Ba'ashim, Yahweh Shai, in truth and spirit and sincerity. Yeah. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about the 10 lost tribes of Israel. All right, the 10 lost tribes of Israel. I've been reading a book recently. I haven't gone through all of it, just probably halfway through the book. And I've come across some beautiful extracts talking about the 10 lost tribes of Israel and who they are. Now, we know through research and through biblical scripture that the 10 lost tribes of Israel are the Native American Indians in the Americas, from North America, South America to Canada, and lived all throughout the West Indies. They were known as the Taino Indians, the Arawaks, the Seminole, the Gadites, the Navajo, the Cherokee, the Apache, the Aztecs, the Mayans, the Mapuches. They were known under several names. Today, they're known as Latinos, Mexicans, Hispanics, and Puerto Ricans. That's what they're known as today. Biblically, they were known as the 10 lost tribes of Israel, which was like Manasseh, Ephraim, Asher, Naphtali. We've got the, I said Manasseh, Joseph, Ephraim. Dan is not there, was not part of the tribes. Let's just pull them out. I'm trying to remember all of them off the back of my head. Manasseh, yeah, Simeon, that's what I'm thinking of. Simeon, Issachar, Zebulun. Yeah, that's who they are really, because you've got Gad, Reuben, Naphtali, Manasseh, Simeon, Issachar, Zebulun, Joseph, which is Ephraim and Manasseh still, but that's Joseph, and that would be Ephraim. Those are the 10 lost tribes of Israel. Now, the Bible tells us in the second book of Ezra's the journey that they took to the Americas. But what I want to read to you first is something from this book here. Now, this is a book, as you can see. It's called Sabin. It's called Sabins Americana. All right, as you can see, it was printed in 1500. So we're talking 519 years ago. This book was printed, all right, and was written, all right. Now it's based on Joseph Sabins' famed bibliography, all right. It's called Biblioteca of Americana, Sabins Americana, all right, 1500, all right. It's a collection of books and pamphlets and serials and other works about the Americas from the time of the discovery to the early 1900s. And when we say the discovery, that's when Esau Edom, the so-called white man, went there. All right. It says Sabins Americana from 1500 to 1926 is rich in original accounts of discovery and exploration, pioneering, Western expansion, the U.S. Civil War and other military actions, Native Americans, slavery, and the abolition, religious history, and more. All right. So this is what this book is based on, right? As you can see, it says Jews in America. Then it says probabilities that the Americans of that race, with the removal of some contrary reasoning and earnest desires for effectual endeavors to make them Christians. All right. Jews of America. When it says Jews of America, it's talking about the Native American Indians. All right. It's not talking about those pilgrims that came from Europe, that came to America and then created this new country called the United States of America in 1776. It's talking about the indigenous people of that land, as we know, are the 10 lost tribes of Israel. So this book is by a man called Thomas, as you can see, Thomas Thorogood, right? Thorogood, that's put this thing together. So I'm going to read a few extracts from this book, and then we're going to pull out some scriptures to back up exactly what these people witnessed. So I'm going to start. start here. All right, we're going to start, pages are numbered. This is page D3. All right, page D3. I'm going to start here. It says, and to tell you the truth, it says, before I had read your discovery and seriously weighed matters, right? When, shall I go up a bit? Confess of peace and truth. Start there, yeah. It says, for it is very evident to me that you have sought after a matter which to much men will seem incredibly ridiculous and extravagant. And it says there, and to tell you the truth, before I had read your discovery and seriously weighed matters, when I thought upon your theme that the Americans should be of the seed of Israel, right? And when it says the Americans, it's talking about the Native American Indians. So anytime you hear me say the Americans or Americana, it's talking about the Native American Indians of North, South America, Canada, all right? So it says there, it says that the Americans should be of the seed of Israel. It seemed to me somewhat strange and unlikely to have the truth in it, but afterwards, when I had weighed your deductions of the matter and looked seriously upon God's hand in bringing into these parts of the world where the Americans are so many religious professors zealous for the advancement of his glory, and who are profited with a belief from the scriptures, and all the tribes of Israel, get away, and all the tribes of Israel shall be called to the knowledge of, I'm just going to read it verbatim, all right, Jesus Christ, before the end of the world, all right, you hear that? And when I had recollected and laid together some other scattered and confined thoughts, all right, which at several times I have received, partly from the places of scripture, which foretell the calling of the Jews, that their restitution to their own land, together with the bringing back of the 10 tribes from all the ends and the corners of the earth, partly from relations which I heard a few years ago concerning 10 tribes, which are the Jews, which the Jews here in Europe have given out. All right. So when he talks about the restitution, he says before, he says when the Lord comes. All right. So he's speaking of here in the Bible, here in the book of Revelations. He talks about before the end times. In the book of Revelations, when it says here, chapter 7, verse 4, and it says, and I heard a number of them which were sealed, right? And they were sealed, Revelation chapter 7, verse 4, and they were sealed 144,000 of all the tribes of the children of Israel, right? Of the tribe of Judah was sealed 12,000. Of the tribe of Reuben was sealed 12,000. Of the tribe of Gad was sealed 12,000. Of the tribe of Asher was sealed 12,000. Of the tribe of Naphtali, 12,000. Manasseh was sealed 12,000. Tribe of Simeon, 12,000. Of the tribe of Levi, 12,000. And of the tribe of Issachar, 12,000. Of the tribe of Zebulun, 12,000. And of the tribe of Joseph, 12,000. And of the tribe of Benjamin was sealed 12,000. So this is what this man is referring to, all right? This is what Sabin is referring to, all right? Joseph Sabin, all right? So we're going to continue reading some extracts from this book. It says, American Indians, it says that I began to stand amazed at the appearance of the probabilities which of many ways offered themselves unto me, to make out and confirm the effect of that which you have said. And when I began also upon another account to wonder at the strangeness of God's conduct over your spirit, that he should have let you work 12 or more years ago, all right? After the search of such a matter by historical observations, whereof then so few right? As almost no footsteps at all were extant to be traced, and whereof now of a sudden the world is like to be filled with such evidence that it will be an astonishment to all that shall hear of it and lay it to heart, and that all who have integrity, right, will be contrived to confess, right, will be constrained to be confessed that indeed there is a God who ruleth in the earth, all right, and that he has ordered the affairs of the nations by a universal providence to bring to pass his own counsel, and that the things which he has revealed by his word should in latter times be accomplished, all right. He says, for to my apprehension, this will be the great benefit of these discoveries, namely that the mouths of the atheists will be stopped and convinced of irrationality and foolishness, right? For when it shall appear to all men undeniably that the transformation, right? For when it shall appear to all men undeniably that the transmigration of nations and the affairs of the world have not been carried hereto by mere chance or by the craftiness of human counsel or by force, but by the wisdom of a supreme conduct, all right? Who has ordered all things from the beginning towards the end, which has been before foreknown, and to define foretold, when this shall appear, and in the midst of all these changes and confusions, there is a conduct overruling the force of man. And what does that make you think of? Daniel, when he's writing this in his memoirs, this makes you think of Daniel's chapter 2, when the Lord says, that's what we're going to do, we're going to bring out some precepts bit by bit. Remember, these notes were put together in 1500. We're talking over 500 years ago, right? When Joseph Sabin traveled to the Americas, right, with some other people. That makes you think of, when he says that, that makes me go straight to Daniel 2. Daniel 2 I want, or Daniel 4? Hold on. Daniel chapter 4 verse 17, all right? When Daniel says here, Daniel 4:17, this matter is by decree of the watchers and the demand by the word of the holy ones, to the intent that the living may know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men and giveth it to whosoever he will, right? And setteth up over it the basis of men. And that's what Esau was, the basis of men. That's why they were able to go to the Americas and do these things, all right? So Joseph Sabin understood that from the scriptures, right? So we're going to continue reading. It says, when this shall appear, and that in the midst of these changes and confusions, there is a conduct overruling the force of man, which is what we just read the precept there in Daniel 4:17, all right? And disappointing the counsels of the crafty, then the eyes of all men will be upon the Lord, and God alone will be exalted in righteousness, and the Holy One of Israel in judgment. All right? So then it says here, it says, where is it? It says, foreseeing it is evident, all right? It says, foreseeing it is evident that the 10 tribes of Israel have been as if it were lost in the world near about the space of 2,000 years, according to scripture, all right? If now they should again appear upon the stage, first as if it were in another world by themselves, and then afterwards speedily come from thence hither to the land of their ancient inheritance. It says, where they shall be joined to their brethren, the Jews, which is clearly foretold by the prophets, shall come to pass. If I say those things should now begin to come to pass, what can all the world say otherwise? But the Lord's counsel does stand. All right, this is beautiful what this man wrote, right? It says, and that he has fulfilled the words spoken by his servants, the prophets, concerning Israel, that although all the sinful kingdoms of the nation shall be destroyed from off the face of the earth, yet the house of Jacob shall not be utterly destroyed, but shall be corrected in measure. It says, for lo, I will command and I will sift the house of Israel among the nations, like as a corn is sifted a sieve, yet shall not the least grain upon the earth fall. And what does that bring you to? That's Amos. We're going to bring some of these out. Amos chapter 9, verse... Amos 9... Zechariah, sorry. Amos 9 verse 8. Amos 9 verse 9, all right? This is what he's quoting in his memoirs, right? This is what I'm still reading from his memoirs. This is what he's quoted from his memoirs, right? Joseph Sabin, right? He says, for lo, I will command, Amos chapter 9 verse 9. It says, for lo, I will command and I will sift the house of Israel among the nations, like as a corn is sifted in a sieve. Ye shall not the least grain fall upon the earth. All the sinners of my people shall die by the sword, which say the evil shall not overtake them, nor prevent us. All right? So this is what he just quoted here. Amos, I think he started from verse 8, when he says, yeah, he did. Amos chapter 9, verse 8. He said, behold, the eyes of the Lord power, Yahweh, are upon the sinful kingdom, and I will destroy it from the face of the earth, saying that I will not utterly destroy the house of Jacob, says Yahweh. For lo, I will command, and I will sift the house of Israel among all nations, like as a corn is sifted in a sieve, yet shall the least grain fall upon the earth. So this is what he was quoting there. So when it goes back to, put out some other ones that he says here, Ezekiel 34, Ezekiel 34, when he says, Ezekiel 34 verse 5, and it says, and they were scattered because there is no shepherd, and they became meat to all the beasts of the field when they were scattered. My sheep wandered through all the mountains and upon every high hill. Yea, my flock was scattered upon all the face of the earth, and none did search or seek after him. Right? And then obviously Ezekiel 37, when he says, 37, when it's verse 11, when it says, then he said unto me, so Ezekiel 37 verse 7, then he said unto me, son of man, these bones are the whole house of Israel. Behold, they say, our bones are dried, and our hope is lost. We are cut off for our parts. Therefore prophesy and say unto them, thus says the Lord power, Yahweh. Behold, O my people, I will open your graves and cause you to come up out of your graves and bring you into the land of Israel. And ye shall know that I am Yahweh when I have opened your graves, O my people, and brought you up out of your graves, and shall put my spirit in you, and you shall live, and I shall place you in your own land. Then shall you know that I am Yahweh, have spoken it and performed it, says Yahweh. The word of the Lord Yahweh came unto me, saying, son of man, it says, moreover, thou son of man, take thee one stick and write upon it for Judah, for Judah and for the children of Israel, his companions. Then take another stick and write upon it for Joseph, the stick of Ephraim, and for all the house of Israel, his companions, and join them one to another into one stick, and they shall become one in thine hand. All right? So let's go back to reading some more extracts from this, right? So we just read here when he says, where this is what he was writing when he says, we just go back over it again. When he says, For seeing is, he says, for seeing it is evident that the 10 tribes of Israel have been as it were lost in the world near about the space of 2,000 years, right? If now they should again appear upon the stage, first as it were in another world by themselves, and then afterwards speedily come from thence hither to the land of the ancient inheritance, where they shall be joined to their brethren, the Jews, which is clearly foretold by the prophets shall come to pass, which we just read in Ezekiel 34 and Ezekiel 37, all right? Now I'm gonna jump down to the bottom of the page here. It says, the destruction then of the spiritual Babylon by the reformation of Israel shall make out this to all the earth, that God alone is the Lord over all, and the Savior of the people that put their truth in his name. All right? It says, first then I shall impart unto you some stories which I heard 5 or 6 years ago, when I was in the Low Countries, concerning the 10 tribes, and then I shall add some information concerning the state of the Jews in our European and Asiatic worlds, which I have learned at other times by some providence which God has offered unto me. And upon the whole matter I shall leave you to your further conjectures by that which I shall show. All right, so you got to think 500 years ago, all right, Joseph Sabin, all right, was in the Americas, as you can see, all right, 500 years ago, doing the work of the Lord, right, trying to work out who are the 10 lost tribes of Israel, who are those people, the Native American Indians in the Americas, right, and he wrote this down. This is his own words, and also some of these documents that he's got in this book here were written by other men who were traveling with him, who he came across, that gave him information about the 10 lost tribes of Israel and who the Native American Indians are. So you got to really think about this. This is a man doing this in the 1500s, all right, in the 1500s, right, who understood the Bible, knew that the children of Israel could not go home and would not be repatriated to the land of Israel until the 12 tribes of Israel are gathered from the 4 corners of the world. And he also knew that only the Lord, Yahweh, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ, is going to actually bring them, literally bring them home. He understood that 500 years ago. But many people today, especially so-called black people, especially all those that call themselves theologians, don't even understand that simple point today in 2019. But this man, Joseph Sabin, understood this 500 years ago when he was actually doing the work. All right? So we're going to jump down here. It says here, he says, where should I start? He says, the other was that a messenger was come unto the Jews who resided near about the Holy Land from the 10 tribes, to make inquiry concerning the state of the land, and what was become of the two tribes and a half, the 2.5 tribes which was left in it, when they were transported from thence. This messenger was described to be a grave man, having some attendants, right, in good equipage about him. He told them that the people from which he was sent were the tribes of Israel, which in the days of Hosea the king were carried captives out of their own land by the king of Assyria, who transported them from Samaria into Assyria and the cities of the Medes. But they, being grieved for their transgressions, which caused God to be angry with them, they took a resolution to separate themselves from all idolaters, and so went from the heathen where they were placed, right, with a resolution to live by themselves, and objective that the commandments and to obey the commandments of God, which in their own land they had not observed. It says in prosecuting this resolution, right, After a long journey of a year and 6 months, they came to a country wholly destitute of inhabitants, where now they have increased into a great nation, and are to come from thence into their own land by the direction of God, and to show them that he was a true Israelite. Oh, this is beautiful. He had brought with him a scroll of the law of Moses written according to their customs. So what is he quoting here? He's actually quoting in the book of 2 Kings first, right? He's quoting in the book of 2 Kings chapter 17 first, when he's actually talking about when the Israelites went into captivity under the king of Assyria, which is Shalmaneser the fifth of Assyria. So he was actually quoting here 2 Kings chapter 17. We're going to bring it out to you, all right? Just to show you. And remember, this man wrote these documents in the 1500s. So we're talking 520 years ago. 500 years ago, all right? Just for conservative mates. So 2 Kings chapter 17, he wrote, this is what he was quoting. 2 Kings chapter 17, where it says here, it says, in the 20th year of Ahaz, king of Judah, began Hosea, the son of Elah, to reign in Samaria over Israel 9 years. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, but not as the kings of Israel that were before him. Against him came up Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, and Hoshea became his servant and gave him presents. And the king of Assyria found conspiracy in Hoshea, for he had sent messengers to the so king of Egypt and brought no presents to the king of Assyria. And as he had done year by year, therefore the king of Assyria shut him up and bound him in prison. Then the king of Assyria came up throughout all the land and went up to Samaria and besieged it 3 years. And in the 9th year of Hoshea, the king of Assyria took Samaria and carried Israel away into Assyria, and placed them in Hala and in Harbor and by the river of Gozan and in the cities of the Medes. For so it was that the children of Israel had sinned against the Lord Yahweh, their power, which had brought them up out of the land of Egypt, from under the hand of the Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, and had feared other gods, and walked in the statutes of the heathen, whom the Lord Yahweh cast out from before the children of Israel, and of the kings of Israel which they had made. And the children of Israel did secretly those things that were not right against Yahweh their power, and they built high places in the cities and the tower and the watchmen. So that's what happened to them. They were taken out by the king of Assyria. All right. So this is exactly what Joseph Sabin is writing about here. And then he goes on to speak about when he says that, when he says here, we'll read it again. He says, they were transported from Samaria into Assyria and the cities of the Medes, but they grieved for their transgressions, which caused God to be angry with them, that they took a resolution to separate themselves, right, from all idolaters, right, and so went from the heathen where they were placed, with a resolution to live by themselves, and the objective and to obey the commandments of God, which in their own land they had not obeyed. In prosecuting this resolution, after a long journey for a year and 6 months, they came to a country wholly destitute of the inhabitants. What country is that? That country is the United States of America, the Americas as a whole, the whole continent. So we're talking North America, South America, and Canada. That's the continent that they came to. That took them a year and a half, that journey to get there. All right. It says, and they came to a country wholly destitute of inhabitants, where now they have increased into a great nation, and are to come from then into their own land by the direction of God, and to show them that he was a true Israelite. He had brought with him the scrolls of the laws of Moses, written according to their customs. This is why they found, what was it called again, in the Americas, in Mexico. See if I can quickly bring it up. This is when this is why, you know, when they found these things in the Americas. forget what it's called, man. The thingy bob. It's gone from me. I can see it, boy, but it's just gone from me. Something stoned. The lost lunar stone, right? That's when they found it's called the lost lunar stone, right? Remember, this is what's found. This was found in the Americas, all right? And it was called the LOSLUNAS, right? The lost lunar stone is a larger boulder on the side of a hidden mountain. The stone is also known as the lost lunar's mystery stone or the commandments of the rock. So that just confirms everything what Joseph Sabins said when he met the Native American Indians, that they said that they carried the scrolls, that their forefathers had carried the scrolls of the laws of Moses written according to their customs, all right? So he says here, continue reading, he says, the gentleman who told me this story, right, listen carefully, as from the mouth of the Jew, said that it brought to his mind, it brought to his mind fully by relation of the agreement of the circumstances, right, almost in all things. The story which is recorded in the second book of Ezra's, right, which is called the Apocrypha, chapter 13, verse 40, right? It says, which will be found a truth if that messenger came and made this narrative. This was the first story, and not long after, within the space of 5 and 6 months, a little before I came from the Low Countries, I was told of a Jew who came from America to Amsterdam and brought to the Jews, right, residing there, news concerning the 10 tribes, that he had been with them upon the border of their land and had converted with some of them for a short, and had conversed with some of them for a short space, and seen and heard remarkable things while he stayed with them. Wherefore then I could not learn the true particulars, but I heard that a narrative was made in writing of that which he had related, which before I went from Holland, right? So he's referring to 2nd Ezra chapter 13 verse 40. So let's quickly bring that out. 2nd Ezra chapter 13 verse 40. This talks about the journey. To know that 500 years ago you had people that were seriously looking into the 10 lost tribes of Israel to that detail, that they knew the scriptures themselves. And you think when we bring out these scriptures that somehow we don't know what we're talking about? Are you kidding me, man? We've always told you about 2nd Ezra chapter 13. We knew about this journey from this book, and we've always told you this is how Columbus knew how to get to the Americas. He read the book of 2nd Ezra. This is why Columbus had 5 Hebrew translators on his boat, because he knew those people in the New World, in the Americas, were Hebrew. They were the 10 lost tribes. He knew where they fled to because he had read the scripture. He read 2nd Ezra. 2nd Ezra chapter 13 verse 40. It says, 2nd Ezra chapter 13 verse 40. It says, those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Hoshea the king, who Shalmaneser, the king of Assyria, led away captive, and he carried them over the waters, and so came they into another land. But they took this counsel amongst themselves, that they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country where never mankind dwelt, that they might there keep their statutes which they never kept in their own land. And they entered into the Euphrates by the narrow passage of the river. For the Most High then showed signs for them, and held still the flood till they were passed over. For through the country there was a great way to go, namely of a year and a half, and the same region is called Azarus. Then dwelt they there until the latter time, and now when they shall begin to come. So that latter time they dwelt there, it was to the time of when the southern kingdom, Judah, Benjamin and Levi, that were taken from the west coast of Africa, joined them when they were brought there through the transatlantic slave trade. That's why it says there, when it says, verse 46 says, then dwelt they there until the latter time, talking about the 10 lost tribes, and now when they shall begin to come. And when it says, and now when they shall begin to come, That was the rest of the, that was the 3 tribes, or what they call the 2.5 tribes: Benjamin, Judah, and Levi. And that's when now you had the whole 12 tribes now in the Americas. When the last 3 tribes came, or the 2.5 tribes, however you want to call it, came from the west coast of Africa, from the transatlantic slave trade. But 2,000 years before that, you had the Northern Kingdom come, after they were taken into captivity by Shalmaneser V, because that happened around 720 BC, when Shalmaneser V took the children of Israel from the Northern Kingdom, right, into captivity, right? Because when he did that, he put other people in the land of Israel. So when you read the scriptures, oh, that can go there. When you read the scriptures about Shalmaneser, whoops. So when you read the scriptures, when you go back to 2 Kings, right? Well, when you go back to the book of 2 Kings, chapter 17, and it says, 2 Kings chapter 17 verse 22, right? It says, 2 Kings chapter 17 verse 22, it says, "For the children of Israel walked in all the sins of Jeroboam, which he did. They departed not from them." And Jeroboam was the first king of the northern kingdom when the kingdom of Israel split into 2 after Solomon's death. Jeroboam became the king of the northern kingdom, and Rehoboam, Solomon's son, became the king of the southern kingdom, which was Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. All right. It says, "For the children of Israel walked in all the sins of Jeroboam, which he did. They departed not from them." So we're in the book of 2 Kings chapter 17 verse 23. It says, "Until the Lord removed Israel out of his sight, as he had said by all his servants the prophets. So was Israel carried away out of their own land to Assyria unto this day. And the king of Assyria brought men from Babylon, and from Cuthah, and from Avar, and from Hamath, and from Sepharim, and placed them in the cities of Samaria instead of the children of Israel. And they possessed Samaria and dwelt in the cities thereof." And that happened around 720 BC. All right, you can look that up. That's King Shalmaneser V of Assyria that did that. All right, so, and then what we just read there a little while ago earlier in 2nd Esdras was the journey that the Israelites took from the northern kingdom after because they was in captivity for about 25 years under Shalmaneser V. And after that captivity come to an end, they made an agreement amongst themselves. They decided amongst the tribes whether to go back to the land of Israel or to find somewhere new. And because they had gone off so much when they was back in the land of Israel, they wanted to find a new place to worship and praise Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai, and they was taking all of the laws of Moses with them, just like what he says here, all right? What Sabin says here, what was told him, right? What they was told by the Native American Indians, and what he was told and what he wrote down here. So we go to the next page here. It says here, we're on page E2 now. It says, and just so you can see, right, the writing in this book, right, is written as it was first put together. All right, as you can see, it was written when it was first put together. So J didn't exist in the English alphabet back then. A lot of words were spelled differently back then, with using different letters to spell them. So I'm reading it. This is why you may see sometimes I stop somewhere, because I'm reading it in the original English that it was written in, right? Before the type of English that we have today and how words are spelled today, all right? It says, in his first letter dated November the 25th, right? 1500. He says that in this treaty he handles of the first inhabitants of America, which he believes were of the 10 tribes. All right, so we know the Native American Indians are the first inhabitants of America, North America, South America, Canada, the West Indies. All right, what they called the New World back then. Right, so this is his first letter that was sent to him. Right. We go up a bit. It says, Mr. Antonio Monterinos, he came to give me satisfaction, had written indeed of a letter, a treaty which he shortly would publish, and whereof I should receive of many copies as I should desire. All right. It says in his first letter dated November the 25th, 1500, he says that in his treaty he handles of the first inhabitants of the America, which he believes were of the 10 tribes. Moreover, that they are scattered also in other countries which he names, and that he keeps their true and that they keep their true religion, right, listen carefully, as hoping to return again into the Holy Land in due time. So when those devils came to the Americas, when Esau, these Edomites, these so-called Europeans came to Americas, the Native American Indians were still following the laws, commandments and statutes, right, and keeping the laws of Moses while they was out there. It was these devils that came and corrupted them, you know. He's writing here. He said when he received the letter from a Mr. Antonio Monterinos, he says in the first letter dated November the 25th, he says that in his treaty he handles of the first inhabitants of America, which he believes were of the 10 tribes. Moreover, that they were scattered also in other countries, which he names, and that they keep their true religion as hoping to return again into the Holy Land in due time. He says in his second letter dated the 23rd of December, he says more distinctly thus, I declare how that our Israelites were the first finders out of America, right? Not regarding the opinions of other men, right? Which I thought good to refute in few good words only. And I think that the 10 tribes live not only there, but also in other lands scattered everywhere. It says, these never did come back to the second temple. See it there? You think they don't know? You think Esau don't know that those Native American Indians are the 10 lost tribes of Israel? You think this book could be printed and Esau's scholars, the wise men of Teman, don't know that the Native American Indians are the 10 lost tribes of Israel, and that those people in the land of Israel calling themselves Israelis are not Israelites, don't have a single drop of blood of an Israelite, do not go back to the 12 tribes. You think they don't know that those Native American Indians are our brothers? You know how many times we tell our people this? See, a lot of our own people believe it's only Jakes, it's only so-called black people that make up the 12 lost tribes of Israel. And we've always told you this, that the Native American Indians are the 10 lost tribes of Israel. You think this man is writing this book in the 1500s and he's going to write some inconspicuous lie? For what? For what reason? For what gain would he do this? There's nothing that he can gain from doing this in 1500. Now a man would write his lies and his own stories and try to cover over the truth, because they have a set of people in the land of Israel calling themselves Israelis, Jewish, who are not the children of Israel. They are not Israelites. So these people that control everything, they are the ones that will tell you who's who. But when you go back to these books that were written when these people first went to the Americas, they made it quite clear that the Native American Indians are the 10 lost tribes of Israel. Are you kidding me? Let me read it again to you. It says in the second letter, dated the 23rd of December, he says more distinctly thus, I declare how our Israelites were the first finders of the Americas, not regarding the opinions of other men, which I thought good to refute in few words only. And I think that the 10 tribes live not only there, but also in other lands scattered everywhere. These never did come back to the second temple, and they keep till this day still the Jewish religion, seeing all the prophecies which speak of their bringing back into their native soil must be fulfilled. So then, at the appointed time, all the tribes shall meet from all the parts of the world into 2 provinces, namely Assyria and Egypt. Nor shall their kingdom be any more divided, but they shall have one prince, the Messiah, and the son of David, their king. I rate this man, you know. I rate this man. 500 years ago, this man knows the scriptures. Joseph Sabin knows the scriptures. Understood. He went and seek out the truth and he found it. I tell you, boy. It says here. It says, by all which you see, he's full agreement with your conjecture concerning the Americans, that they are descended of the Hebrews, which his book comes into my hand, you shall have it, God willing. Oh my gosh. Let's read a few more. It says, let's read a few more extracts here. It says, as for the carrots, it says, God has so ordered it that the greatest bodies of them are in the northern parts of the world, by which the 10 tribes, if ever they come to the Holy Land, are likely to come from. What's that northern part of the world? North America. Because that's where all the 12 tribes are going to be on the great day of deliverance. We've always said that the great deliverance is going to happen in America. It says here, it says, and when this sword shall be thus powerful in the hands of his saints, it said, the true prophets with the one troop and the true carrots with the other. It says, then shall be fulfilled the prophecy of the psalmist, that vengeance shall be executed upon the heathen, punishment upon the people and their kings. Oh my gee, he's reading Psalms 137. And their kings shall be bound with chains, and their nobles with fetters of irons. So he's writing here about the great battle of Armageddon. Let me just go up a few verses here. Let's go up a few verses here. Let's start from here. He says here, he says, that which they do for... He says, then will the great battle of Armageddon be fought, whereunto all these troubles and changes are but preparatives. Then shall the sword of the Spirit of the word of God prevail mighty over the spirits of all men. The two edges thereof on the right hand and on the left will cut sharp and pierce to the dividing asunder of the soul and spirit and of the joints and marrow. So he's reading Hebrews 4 and 12 there. That's what he's quoting. And to the discerning of the thoughts and intentions of the heart. And when this sword shall be thus powerful in the hands of his saints, which are the Israelites, right? The true prophets with one troop, and the true carrots, that says, chariots, I'm not sure, that must be like a sect, with the other, then shall be fulfilled the prophecy of the psalmist, that the vengeance shall be executed upon the heathen and punishment upon the people, and their kings shall be bound with chains, and their nobles with fetters of irons, and the honors... Cut out there for a minute, had a little intervention there. Read it back here again. It says, read it back, it says, then shall be fulfilled the prophecy of the psalmist, that vengeance shall be executed upon the heathen and punishment upon the people, that their kings shall be bound with chains and their nobles with fetters of irons, and that honor due to all saints shall be given them, to be made executioners of the judgment written in the word of God against them. We know not how near these things are at hand. Oh, let me tell you. See, back then, he didn't know how near these things are. Now, we're in the year 2019. This book was written in 1500, all right? So he's saying he did not know how near it was back then. But now, we know that we are that close to this judgment, to this war, to the war of Armageddon, to the mark of the beast, which is the RFID chip. We know we're that close to all of this time. But when Joseph Sabin wrote this back then, he said it with his own words. We know not how near these things are at hand. Let us therefore be watchful and put on the armor of light to be ready when the bridegroom comes. Who's the bridegroom? Yahweh Shai, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. That's the bridegroom, all right? To go with him in our wedding garment, having our lamps burning and provision of... This man is definitely, 100%, this man, Joseph Sabin, has got to be an Israelite. No ifs, no buts, no maybes. He's got to be an Israelite. There's no way this man could know all this and put in so much work to find out who the Native American Indians are and work out that they are the 10 lost tribes of Israel, and able to connect the dots from the book of 2 Kings chapter 17 to the book of 2 Ezra chapter 13, and all the other prophecies in the Bible, from Ezekiel's prophecies to Isaiah's prophecies to do the children of Israel being scattered. This man, Joseph Sabin, who wrote this book, is definitely an Israelite. He says, and to this effect the Lord teach us to be diligent, to be found of him in peace, without spot, blamefulness, that in the midst of these fightings and confusions we may not be found as many are, right? Smiting their fellow servants, eating and drinking largely of the spoil of those that are spoiled, and being drunken with the passions of malice, entertained for the revenge of injuries, or of the covetousness and ambition, prosecuted for self-interest, right? And with this prayer I shall commend you to the grace of God and left. Man, this, look, your faithful friend, fellow laborer. So he wrote this part. This part here was written in what, 1649. Let me just show you. January the 7th, he wrote this thing here. January the 7th, 1649. So this letter now, remember this book was made up of a collection of books, pamphlets, serials and letters, right? This particular one that I just read here, regarding what he spoke about the Israelites and the Psalms of David, right? That's talking about their king shall be bound with chains and their nobles with fetters of irons, right? That was written in 1649. So, and the person that wrote this was J. Dury. It says, your faithful friend and fellow laborer in the gospel of Yahweh Shai, J. Dury. So these people are, J. Dury's got to be an Israelite. He's the one that was speaking about the day of Armageddon and not knowing how close we are to it. But for him to pull out these scriptures, he knows there's an almighty judgment coming for those elites. So he's probably looking at the elites of his times and knowing that these motherfuckers are not going to escape their judgment. Are you kidding me? Let's read out a few more things from here. So we're in page B2. So it says there, the first conjecture that the Americans are Indians, right? Sorry, that the Americans are Jews. You see it says there? The first conjecture that the Americans are Jews, right? So when it says the Americans, it's talking about the Native American Indians, right? It says the Indians do themselves relate things of their ancestors, right? Suitable to what we read of the Jews in the Bible and elsewhere, which they also mention to the Spaniards at their first access to them, right? So it says Montezuma the Great, right? Everyone knows who Montezuma is, right? Montezuma, the great king of Mexico, right? In an oration made to his noble people, persuading subjection to the king of Spain, minds his countrymen that they heard from their forefathers how they were strangers in the land, and by a great prince very long ago brought thither a fleet. So you have to wonder if that is the Yahweh Shai, because they always speak about that Yahweh Shai came and visited the Americas, and I forget what they call him in Mexico. There's a name for Yahweh Shai, what they call in Mexico. He's a great God that they say came and visited them 2,000 years ago, and I forget what they call him, but I will look it up and see if I can put it up when I edit the video, all right? So it says here, we read back again, it says, Montezuma, the great king of Mexico, in an oration, which is an oral speaking, made to his noble people, persuading subjection to the king of Spain, minds his countrymen that they heard from their forefathers how they were strangers in that land, and by a great prince very long ago brought thither a fleet. it says, they boast their pedigree from men, preference in the sea by God himself, right? That God made one man and one woman, bidding them live together and multiply, and how in a famine he rained bread for them from heaven, who in a time of drought also gave them water out of a rock. So he's talking about the great deliverance. He's talking about Moses here. So what Montezuma's talking about here is Moses, not Yahushua. He's actually talking about Moses. All right? I know the Mexicans, they speak about Yahushua had came there, all right, but I will look that up. Right? But what he's actually specifically talking about here, Montezuma, the story that he's telling to his people, he's telling the story about Moses, the deliverance, the Exodus from under the Pharaohs, when they were delivered out of Egypt. When, remember, there was rain, bread, manna, they called it bread from heaven, and they was dying of thirst, and they was complaining to Moses, and Moses went to the rock and he knocked the rock and the fresh water came out of the rock. It's all in the book of Exodus, all right? It says here, it says, they boast their pedigree from the men, preference in the sea by God himself, that God made one man and one woman, bidding them live together and multiply, and how in a famine he rained bread for them from heaven, and who in time of drought also gave them water out of a rock. Many other things themselves say were done for them, such as the scriptures related concerning the Israelites as coming out of Egypt, as their peregrination many years. All right, it says the oracles they received, their ark of the bullock of the bullock, wherein Vitsi Liputsi was included, of the tabernacle of the ark. So they had their own ark. It was called the ark of Bulruff. All right, so the Montezuma, which are they were the Aztecs, had their own ark. Right? It was called the Ark of the Bulrush. Bulrush. The Ark of Bulrush. B-U-L-R-U-S-H. It says, wherein Vitsi Lupitsi was included, of the tabernacle of the ark, right? Which was the ark that Moses had. The tabernacle was the Ark of the Covenant, right? Carried by 4 priests, and how they pitched their tents according to its direction, and who sees not faith Malavanda, much probability that the Mexicans are Jews. How could they self-report the manner of their coming into the promised land? So they knew the Mexicans, which were the Aztecs, were Jews. So it says here, I'm just jumping around here now, right? He became... Jumping around here, we're going to go to here. It says, Meraz, K Meraz, before named, does not only aver that many learned men in Brazil take the natives to be Jews, but they themselves, taught by a most ancient tradition, acknowledge their forefathers to be of that lineage. And now whereas some conceive that the 10 tribes to be either shut up beyond the Caspian mountains, whence they would not get out, though they begged to leave of Alexander the Great, yet the way was made miraculously impassable against them, as the same comforter relates. Other suppose them to be utterly lost, and if once so, disposable in the opinions of some that are to be found in America. It says here, what's his name? This man's name is Acostas. Acostas acknowledges this to be the judgment of the difference to which he is not only adverse himself, but endeavors to answer their arguments, as will he show hereafter. All right? To the conjecture of the natives, let this chapter be concluded with the judgment of 2 others that have reason for what they say. The first is Emmanuel de Moraes, spoken of affirming those of Brazil to be Jews. First, because those Brazilians married into their own tribe and kindred. Secondly, their manner is also to call their uncles and aunts fathers and mothers. Thirdly, they are given much to mourning and tears in the funeral of solemnities, right? Like a solemn funeral, right? And last of all, they both have garments much alike. So you know what those garments are with the and the next matter is one of the first, if not the first of our nation in England, that learned that the language and so prepared towards the conversion of the natives, which proposed of his being known, he was desired to observe it, should find anything, they found anything judicial among them. He kindly answers to those letters from Salem in New England, the 20th of the 10th month, more than 10 years since he arrived. It says, 3 things make me suspect that the poor natives come from the southward and are Jews or Jewish, and not from the northern barbers as some imagine. It says, themselves constantly affirm that their ancestors came from the southwest, and thither they all go dying. They constantly and strictly separate their women in a little wigwam by themselves in their feminine seasons, right? Just like the laws of Moses, right? The laws of purification. And beside their god, Kuta, to the southwest, they hold that Nani is called Nana Witanawit, a god overhead, made the heavens and the earth, and some of the affinity with the Hebrews I have found. It says there, it says, the rites and fashions and ceremonies and opinions of the Americans are in many things agreeable to the customs of the Jews, right? Not only profane and common usage, but such as he called solemn and sacred, right? He says, first of all, he says the Indians wear garments fashioned as the Jews. A fringe coat, that's the fringe at the bottom, a square little coat, they go barefoot. If you should ask a man of Brazil what vestment would please him best, he would answer preferably a long coat, the habit of the Jews. And this may seem no light consideration to such as mine. Such as mine. It says confidence that the Spaniards planted themselves in Italy, for they have the same kind of covering on their heads and shoes of their feet. It says they constantly anoint their heads as did the Jews. It says they do not only pride themselves with earrings, but their noses are bored also. They have jewelries hanging on them, which they call kariakori, like it is read in Esther 3:20. It says, in all India, they wash themselves often twice or thrice in the day, and the women in Brazil 10 times, says, and the Jews were frequent in this, all right? It says, they delight exceedingly in dancing, men and women, yea, women apart by themselves, and for they did this in Israel. And thus, especially after the victories and the overthrows of enemies, which is found also in the scriptures, right? In the book of Judges 21, Samuel's 18, verse 6 and 7, 1 Samuel's 18, verse 6 and 7, Judges 21, verse 21 to 23, Judges 11, verse 34. It says, as the Jews wont to call them fathers and mothers, they were not their natural parents, so the Indians give the same appellation and unlike to their aunts. In America, they eat no swine's flesh. It says, it is hateful to them as it was among the Jews. It says, they wash strangers' feet and are very hospitable to them. And this was known as a commendation of all of old Israel. It says the Indians compute their times by nights. And use which confesses they and news which they confesses they had from the Hebrews, because remember we mark the times from sunset to sunset. The same thing how they do it. Oh man, I mean there's so much more in this book, right? Let's read this last. Shall I read this last little bit here? It says, yeah, it says circumcision is frequent among the native Indians, which some, not observing, have thereupon denied them to be the Jews. It says, confidently, we have so many witnesses that the American Indians be circumcised as it becomes not a modest man to deny it, and among the rarities brought from those quarters, speaks of stony knives, very sharp cuttings, all right? And his illustration shows that the Jews of old did use such in their circumcising, knives of stone with sacrament omitted 40 years in their travel is reviewed by God's commands, right? To make these sharp knives. Yeah, that's right. It says, and does not only mention those rocky knives, but adds taken from a sharp rock, as if the allusion also were to Christ the rock that does circumcise our hearts. It says the Indians worship that God, they say, who created the sun, the moon, and all the invisible things, who gives them all of that is good. They knew of that sound which drowned the world, and that it was sent for the sin of man, especially for unlawful lust, and that there shall never be such a deluge again. It is affirmed by them, nevertheless, that after many years fire shall come down from above and consume all. Let me read that again. That's go straight to Revelation. It says, it says they knew. Oh, I misread that word. Let me go up again. It says here, it says the Indians worship that God, they say, who carried the sun and the moon and all the invisible things, who give them also all that is good, right? It says there, it says they knew of that flood. So they knew of the flood which drowned the world. I misread that word. They said they knew of the flood which drowned the world, and that it was sent for the sin of man, especially for unlawful lust, that there shall never be such a deluge again. So they knew about the flood, they knew about Noah's Ark and the flood. Simple as that. So for them to, it's impossible for them to have known about this without them being the 10 lost tribes of Israel. Impossible. Then it says there, it is affirmed by them, nevertheless, that after many years fire shall come down from above and consume all. That's the judgment, because the Lord is coming with fire and brimstone, which is what we tell you, which is World War III, the war of Armageddon. And then the chariots are going to come to deliver the elect of Israel, and then the chariots of the Lord are going to be the final judgment on the earth. That's going to be firing the lasers. That's going to cause the complete destruction of the United States of America. So they knew about the war of Armageddon, and that the last war, the last destruction, is going to be by fire. This man is writing this in the 1500s, people. It says they believed the immortality of the soul, and that there is a place of joy, another of tormented death, whither they shall go that kill, lie or steal, which place they call Popopogufo, a great pit, like the expression. But they which do no harm shall receive into a good place and enjoy all manner of pleasure. Well, there is no place of hell, but the Bible, because the Bible speaks of it in a certain way, people misinterpret that. But they would not have, you see, with them, they not even having the book of Revelations, somehow knew that the last destruction is going to come by fire. That's beautiful. It says the American Indians have in some parts an exact form of king, priest, and prophets, as were in aforetime in Canaan in ancient Israel. Priests are in some things among them, as with the Hebrews. Physicians are not habited as other men. I don't think I need to go into any more. I just really wanted to just give this to you today, boy, to show you that the Native American Indians are the 10 lost tribes of Israel. And I know we didn't bring out many scriptures today. I just wanted to bring out certain scriptures to show you that this book was written 500 years ago, right? And it's a book by Joseph Sabin, right, who is a famed bibliography, which means he studies the Bible. Sabins America, 1500. It's a collection of books, pamphlets, serials, and other works about the Americas from the time of their discovery to the early 1900s. And that's what he discovered, that the Native American Indians and all of their customs and all of their ways are the 10 lost tribes of Israel. And he quoted many scriptures in his writings and in the pamphlets and the writings that he put together to make this book to show you that. So I don't care what anyone people can keep on trying to bring across that same bullshit, trying to tell you that the Native American Indians are not the 10 lost tribes of Israel. These people knew this. Esau, Edom knew this, and I believe this man is a Joseph Sabin, and the other people that took part in putting this book together, that wrote pamphlets and serialized works in this book, that they were all of one mind and understood the Bible, the judgment that's to come, understood that the 12 tribes have to be gathered from the four corners of the world and brought back to the land of Israel by God, by the Most High's got to do that. Not through a 747, a plane, a train, or automobile, or the Balfour Treaty. The Most High is going to send his son to deliver the 12 tribes of Israel, and that the 12 tribes are going to be in one place where the great deliverance is going to take, but they're also going to be scattered to the four corners of the world. So I don't think I need to say any more, boy. I just really wanted to get into this, boy, today, boy, and just let you know, boy, that this is a great book to have. Let me tell you, this is so much evidence in this one book that tells you that they are the 10 lost tribes of Israel. No ifs, no buts, no maybes. So on that note, I'm going to give all praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashim, Yahushai, Ba'ashim, Rakah, Kodash, Tawada, Amen. Shalom Akayam, and double honors to the brothers that are still bringing out this word in truth and spirit and sincerity, and in the name of Yahweh, Ba'ashim, Yahushai. And I pray this was an edifying lesson to the Akiyams who still are not sure or want to get more information about the 10 lost tribes of Israel and who the Native American Indians are. Shalom.